There comes a time in every soul's journey when the noise of the crowd drowns out the whispers of eternity. We are social beings, yes, but not made to blend endlessly into the chatter of the men. You were not created to follow the echo of countless voices, but to listen for a singular call, one that beckons you from a higher place. Too often, we surround ourselves with many, thinking that presence equates to peace, and yet in the multitude, we find confusion, not clarity. Solitude is not isolation, it is alignment with purpose. This truth often escapes the noise-driven culture we live in, where silence is mistaken for emptiness and solitude for loneliness. But solitude is not the absence of people. It is the presence of purpose. It is not retreating from the world in defeat, but stepping away in deliberate strength. It is not a punishment, but a preparation, not a void, but a vessel that allows the soul to hear what it could never perceive in the clamor of the crowd. We live in a time when connection is celebrated so much that disconnection feels unnatural. We're told that to be surrounded is to be successful, that to always be engaged is to be alive. But there's a deception in constant presence, because the more time we spend reacting to others, the less time we spend responding to the voice within. Solitude does not mean you hate people. It means you understand that your spirit needs space to breathe, to grow, to become. And in that sacred space, you align with something far greater than public approval. You align with divine intention. There is something sacred about being alone with your own thoughts. In the silence, distractions fall away. The masks that we often wear in company, those unconscious defenses of image and identity, are removed. What remains is the core of who we are and who we are meant to become. In solitude, we come face to face with the truth that was too subtle to be heard in conversation, too sacred to be spoken in casual noise. It is there, in the quiet places, that our purpose begins to glow with clarity. Here, this alignment that solitude brings is not a momentary feeling. It is a realignment of the soul to its original coordinates. We were not made to drift aimlessly from voice to voice, nor to endlessly adjust ourselves to the expectations of others. Our hearts were designed to tune in to the whisper of a higher calling, and that whisper is not found in the volume of the world, but in the stillness of solitude. And yet, how often we fear being alone. We fill every moment with noise, music, conversations, opinions, just to avoid the still small voice that waits for us beneath it all. When you embrace solitude, you begin to understand that your value is not dependent on how many people surround you or how often they affirm you. You begin to realize that purpose is not voted on by the crowd. In fact, the most powerful moments of clarity and direction will not happen with a group. They will happen in the quiet chamber of your heart, when the only voice you hear is the one that made you. Alignment happens there, in that holy hush where eternity touches time, and you remember who you are. Great men and women throughout history understood the necessity of solitude. They did not fear the wilderness, the mountain, the secret place. They understood that alignment comes before assignment, and that purpose cannot be rushed by popularity. When we allow ourselves the courage to be alone, we discover that solitude is a forge where destiny is shaped. It is there that your convictions grow roots, your calling gains weight, and your character is refined away from the eyes of the world. Solitude helps you discern the difference between influence and identity. Without it, you begin to echo others more than you express your own heart. But in the silence, your voice returns to you. You stop mimicking what is popular and start embodying what is eternal. This is the quiet miracle of alignment. It doesn't make you louder, it makes you truer. And the truth does not require an audience to be real. So the next time you find yourself feeling distant from the crowd, do not rush to fill the gap. Ask instead what you are being invited to hear. Do not confuse separation with rejection. Often, you are not being removed. You are being refined, and refinement always happens in the fire of solitude, never in the comfort of consensus. What emerges from that fire is a person aligned, unshaken, and deeply aware of who they are and why they are here. Solitude is not isolation. It is sacred alignment. It is where your soul meets its source, and your path is made plain. Let it teach you, mold you, and prepare you. Prepare you. For once you are aligned with purpose, you no longer chase the crowd. You lead from the truth. Too many voices can cloud your clarity and mute your inner calling. In a world overflowing with noise, opinions, expectations, judgments, and endless chatter, the human soul is often suffocated before it even has the chance to speak. We are born with an inner compass, a sense of direction that is quiet, subtle, and deeply personal. But when surrounded by too many voices, that compass can be distorted. It does not break, but it becomes hard to read. The signal is still there, but the static is louder. And so we find ourselves moving, acting, deciding, not because we are certain of our purpose, but because we are overwhelmed by others' ideas of who we should be. Every person carries within them a sacred purpose, a calling that is not always logical to the world. It speaks in whispers rather than shouts, in nudges rather than commands. But too many voices create a crowd in your mind, and in a crowded room, whispers are lost. You may still feel the desire to become something more, to walk a different path, to take a leap of faith, but the many voices around you question it. They advise caution when you feel courage. They suggest comfort when you sense growth. They recommend safety when your spirit longs for sacrifice. Their voices may come with good intentions, but good intentions can still derail a divine direction if they don't match the frequency of your soul. It is not wrong to seek counsel or be in community. But there is a difference between counsel and clutter. When everyone has an opinion about your journey, your decisions become diluted. You start wondering, what will they think, more than a what is right? And once that question becomes louder than your calling, you begin living someone else's life. Slowly, your own voice fades, not because it is weak, but because it is buried under layers of noise. This is how clarity is lost. Not in a single moment, but in thousands of moments when you give away your permission to be yourself. You must understand that not everyone can see what you are called to see. Not everyone will understand your convictions. Not everyone is meant to walk with you where you are going. Their inability to hear what you hear does not make your calling invalid. It makes it sacred. It means it is yours. And because it is yours, it is your responsibility to protect it from interference. The more people you allow into the sacred space of your decisions, the more likely it is that your vision will be fogged, your passion will be questioned, and your courage will be chipped away. Voices have power. Words have weight. And repetition has influence. When you hear the same things over and over again, whether they are doubts, fears, criticisms, or even subtle discouragements, they begin to shape the way you see yourself. You were made to live boldly, but too many cautious voices can make you timid. You were born to speak truth, but too many cynical voices can make you silent. You were meant to fly, but too many grounded voices can clip your wings before you ever take off. It's not always their fault. They are simply speaking from their own fears, their own limits, their own wounds. But if you absorb their fears, you adopt their future. The only way to reclaim clarity is to quiet the crowd. That doesn't mean you stop loving people or listening altogether. It means you become discerning about which voices shape your heart. You start recognizing the difference between a voice that confirms your soul and one that confuses it. You give weight only to the voices that lead you closer to truth, not those that pull you into conformity. When you do this, the fog begins to lift. The whispers of your calling become audible again. The vision that once seemed distant becomes sharp, and the path you are to take, though it may still be narrow, becomes undeniable. When you protect your inner space from too many voices, you protect the essence of your purpose. You create room for clarity to rise, for inspiration to return, and for decisions to come from conviction rather than confusion. You stop living to be understood and start living to be aligned. And in that alignment, you find strength, not the kind of strength that roars, but the kind that moves quietly and relentlessly toward what is true. So be mindful of how many voices you allow into your life, because your calling is not a group project, it is a divine appointment. And only when the noise fades can you truly hear what it has always been trying to say. Your discomfort in crowds may be a divine invitation to elevation. There are moments in life when being surrounded by too many people begins to feel heavy rather than helpful, draining rather than energizing. It is not always a sign of social awkwardness or emotional weakness. It can be a deeper spiritual signal that you are being called away from the common path and towards something more refined, more focused, and more aligned with your unique purpose. The discomfort is not random. It is a prompting, a divine whisper that perhaps your soul is outgrowing the space it used to feel comfortable in. What once felt like community may now feel like clutter because your spirit is preparing for a shift. Elevation is never a casual occurrence. It demands space. It requires separation. Like the eagle that leaves the flock to soar at greater heights, your discomfort around crowds may be a sign that you are no longer meant to blend in. Crowds tend to operate by consensus, but purpose operates by conviction. When you are constantly surrounded by people, each with their own energy, their own expectations, their own rhythms, you begin to compromise your own, not because you are weak, but because the human soul absorbs whatever is around it in. Discomfort comes not because others are bad, but because your inner compass is signaling that the next part of your journey cannot be found in the noise of the many. It must be found in the silence of the few, or even the solitude of one. You may find yourself questioning why you no longer enjoy the company you once cherished. You may wonder why the conversations that used to excite you now feel empty, why the activities that used to energize you now leave you drained. These are not accidents, they are invitations. Are invitations. They are gentle proddings from heaven telling you that you are entering a season of refinement. And refinement rarely happens in crowds. Gold is not purified in a marketplace. It is refined in fire, in solitude, in pressure. So when you begin to feel disconnected from the crowd, it may not be a sign that something is wrong with you. It may be a signal that something sacred is happening within you. Many fear leaving the crowd because the crowd feels safe. It is predictable. It offers validation. But that kind of safety can come at the cost of stagnation. Growth often requires discomfort. And the first kind of discomfort that signals real transformation is the inability to tolerate what you once considered normal. The jokes no longer amuse you. The distractions no longer satisfy, and the surface-level conversations no longer nourish your soul. This shift is not accidental. It is the beginning of elevation. To rise above, you must rise apart. Even in Scripture and the lives of the wise, those chosen for something great were often set apart. Moses had to flee Egypt to discover his calling. David was alone with the sheep before he was anointed king. Elijah stood by himself on Mount Carmel. The pattern is clear. Elevation follows separation. Discomfort is simply the internal evidence that the season is shifting, that what once fit no longer does, that what once served you is no longer sufficient for where you're going. And instead of resisting this discomfort, you are invited to lean into it. Don't fear being misunderstood during this time. Those still comfortable in the crowd may not understand why you've become more quiet, more reflective, more distant. They may assume you're going through a phase or becoming proud, but in truth, you are growing. And growth often feels like isolation before it feels like transformation. The space that feels empty is actually the space being cleared for revelation. And in that revelation, you'll find new vision, new strength, and new direction. So honor your discomfort. Listen to it. Instead of running back to the crowd out of habit, ask what that discomfort is trying to teach you. Perhaps it's time to cultivate deeper focus. Perhaps it's time to hear your own thoughts again, to rediscover the dreams that were drowned out by noise. Perhaps it's time to rise, to step into an identity that no longer conforms, but transforms. You do not need to explain your elevation to those who have not felt its call. You only need to obey it. Because when heaven begins to lift you, it always begins with a pulling away. And what feels like discomfort is simply your soul preparing for altitude. Being set apart is not loneliness. It is preparation for greatness. There is a sacred purpose in the seasons when you find yourself alone, misunderstood, or separated from the crowd. These moments may feel like isolation at first, as though you've been forgotten or left behind, but in truth, they are divine appointments. You are not being cast aside, you are being crafted. You are not being rejected, you are being refined. Greatness is never formed in the spotlight, it is forged in the shadows. It grows in silence, in solitude, and in the hidden places where the eyes of the world do not see but the hands of God still shape. The human soul often equates aloneness with lack. We assume that if we are not surrounded, we are somehow incomplete. But the truth is, the most essential parts of your purpose cannot be developed in the crowd. The crowd sees your face, but not your future. The crowd applauds your image, but knows nothing of your inner battles. Being set apart removes you from the noise of opinion and places you in the clarity of intention. It is in this setting apart that your identity is strengthened, your vision is sharpened, and your heart is recalibrated to its true north. This preparation is not accidental, it is intentional. The great oak does not sprout in a day. It grows underground, rooted deep in unseen soil before it ever touches the sky. Likewise, you are being rooted. The isolation you feel is not a punishment, but a process. It is heaven saying, you are not ready to be revealed yet, because what is coming requires more than what the world currently sees. And so, you are hidden, not to be forgotten, but to be prepared. You are being taught lessons that can only be learned in the quiet, where no applause can interrupt and no distraction can distort. People often misunderstand those who are being set apart. They question the silence, the withdrawal, the change in rhythm. But those who are called to deeper things must walk a narrower path. Not everyone can go with you, and not everyone should. To be set apart means your journey is different. It doesn't mean you are better. It means your assignment is unique. It means the shaping of your character matters more than the speed of your success. It means that the foundation must be deeper, the resolve stronger, and the calling clearer than what is required for those content with comfort. It is in being set apart that you learn to hear the voice of truth more clearly. When there are no distractions, no constant validations, no crowds to please, you begin to know who you truly are. Your faith deepens not because you are surrounded by support, but because you are supported by something greater than human understanding. You begin to trust not in circumstances, but in promises. You learn to walk not by sight, but by purpose. And that kind of strength, built in silence, watered by tears, forged in stillness, cannot be shaken by storms or swayed by trends. There is a difference between being lonely and being alone. Loneliness is a wound. Being alone is a weapon. When you are alone with purpose, every moment becomes sacred. Every thought becomes sharper. Every prayer becomes deeper. And the silence is no longer empty. It is filled with meaning. This is the mystery of preparation, that the place which feels like exile is actually a place of encounter. It is where you meet your calling without interference. It is where your soul is stretched until it matches the size of your future. So do not despise being set apart. Do not rush to fill the silence with distractions or to crowd your life with meaningless noise just to feel connected. What you are feeling is not abandonment. It is alignment. It is alignment. You are being moved out of the ordinary because you are being prepared for the extraordinary. This path is not easy, but it is necessary. And when the time comes for you to step into the fullness of who you are meant to be, the strength you gained in silence will become your foundation. How? You will not rise because you are loud, you will rise because you are grounded. And you will know that being set apart was not a delay in your destiny, but the very soil from which your greatness began to grow. Wisdom, like light, shines most brightly when surrounded by stillness. There is a kind of wisdom that cannot be gained through constant motion, noise, or interaction. It is the type that comes only when the world becomes quiet enough for the soul to speak. In the stillness, wisdom is not just read or remembered. It is revealed. It does not shout. It whispers. And to hear it, one must slow down, step away from the noise, and become attuned to the subtle voice of truth. In the fast-moving, loud world around us, we often confuse information for wisdom. We collect quotes, books, advice, and opinions, thinking they will make us wise. But wisdom is not about accumulation. It is about illumination. It is the ability to discern, to understand what truly matters, to see the essence beyond the appearance. And such clarity is only possible when the noise of the external world fades and the quiet voice within becomes clear. Stillness is not inactivity, it is intentional inner peace. It is the space between reaction and response, where thought has time to deepen and the heart has room to weigh meaning. When we are constantly surrounded by stimulation, the mind becomes reactive. Jumping from one idea to the next without depth, we become quick to speak, quick to judge, quick to move, but not quick to understand. True wisdom requires patience. It demands the kind of stillness that allows ideas to mature and questions to be wrestled with. It grows not in the speed of decision-making, but in the silence of thoughtful reflection. There is a reason the sages of old often sought mountains, deserts, or quiet gardens. They understood that wisdom requires room to breathe. It is born not in crowded halls, but in solitary walks. It rises in the quiet morning moments before the world awakes, in the calm that follows deep prayer or meditation, in the hush of nature where all things seem to pulse with purpose. In these moments, wisdom begins to flicker like a flame, small but powerful, guiding us not with force, but with gentle light. Stillness also reveals what distraction hides. In the absence of constant activity, we begin to see the truth about ourselves. We notice the root of our fears, the patterns of our thoughts, the motives behind our actions. And in that awareness, wisdom takes root, because wisdom is not just knowing what is right, it is knowing why something is right. It is not just making good choices, it is understanding the nature of those choices. That kind of insight cannot be gained when we are constantly surrounded, constantly talking, constantly moving. It comes in silence when the mind is no longer striving to perform and the heart is open to receive. Wisdom's light also reveals the paths we would otherwise miss. In the noise of life, we often walk the well-trodden path simply because it is visible. But in stillness, new paths emerge, ones that were hidden beneath the rush of our routines. These are not always easy paths, but they are true. Wisdom shows us not what is popular, but what is purposeful. It does not lead us to the crowd's applause, but to the soul's alignment. It helps us to say no when it is easier to say yes, to wait when the world says hurry, and to act when fear says freeze. Stillness is not something that happens to us. It is something we must choose. It is a discipline, a retreat from the world, not out of rejection, but out of reverence for what is deeper. And when we choose it, we find that wisdom is not far. It has been waiting patiently, like light behind a curtain, ready to fill the room the moment we pull back the distractions. In this light, we begin to live differently. We speak with intention, act with clarity, love with depth. We become less easily shaken because our roots are not shallow. We begin to live not from noise, but from knowing. And this kind of life, led by the light of wisdom, becomes a beacon to others, a quiet, steady presence that offers guidance, not through argument, but through example. So if you desire wisdom, do not merely seek knowledge, seek stillness. Make space in your life where noise cannot enter and the soul can rise. Wisdom will not force its way into a crowded heart. It will wait until you are ready to listen, and when you do, its light will illuminate everything that truly matters. Withdrawing from noise allows the soul to tune into eternal truths. In the modern world, noise is not just sound, It is a constant stream of distraction, expectation, and surface-level engagement. It fills our days through endless notifications, conversations that skim rather than dive, and environments that never allow a moment of deep stillness. We are surrounded by voices, images, opinions, and pressures, all demanding our attention. Yet in this endless clamor, something precious is often drowned out. The voice of the eternal. The soul, though made for communion, cannot thrive when it's never given space to breathe. And so, to withdraw from the noise is not to escape life, but to encounter it more fully. It is to pull away from what is shallow, so we can reach what is sacred. There are truths written not in ink or speech, but in silence. These truths are not taught in classrooms or shouted in public forums. They emerge in the quiet places, whispered into the heart when all other voices are stilled, free. These eternal truths are the kind that shape a life from within. They are not passing trends or clever ideas, but foundational realities about who we are, why we are here, and what truly matters. The soul was designed to resonate with such truths, like a string that vibrates when struck with the right tone. But just as an instrument cannot be tuned in a noisy room, the soul cannot be aligned when surrounded by chaos. Withdrawal from noise is a deliberate act of reverence. It is a recognition that the most important messages are not shouted, but spoken in the stillness of the heart. When we step back from the crowd, from the screens, from the endless cycle of input, we begin to remember what we've forgotten. We remember that we are not machines built for output, but souls crafted for meaning. We remember that peace is not found in activity, but in awareness, not in more stimulation, but in deeper presence. They are patient, waiting for the moment we grow tired of surface-level living and come seeking something deeper. These truths include the knowledge that we are more than our achievements, more than our social image, more than the opinions others hold about us. They remind us that love is stronger than fear, that grace is greater than performance, and that silence is not empty, it is full of revelation. When we withdraw from noise, even temporarily, we begin to experience time differently. Moments stretch open, and what once rushed by in a blur becomes vivid again. We begin to see beauty in the ordinary, patterns in the chaos, and light in places we never noticed. It is not because the world has changed, but because we are finally still enough to see it. This shift is not a detachment from reality. It is an awakening to reality's deeper layers. We become less reactive, more rooted, less anxious, more aware. We begin to ask better questions, and we learn to wait for real answers. The withdrawal does not have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as a quiet walk, a moment of prayer, an hour without a device, or a deep breath taken with intention. These small pauses open doors. They allow truth to enter, truth that has always been waiting just beyond the noise. With time, this becomes a rhythm. We start to crave the quiet, not because we dislike the world, but because we finally understand what our soul was made for. In the stillness, we discover clarity. We learn to distinguish between what is urgent and what is important, between what is loud and what is true. Eternal truths offer a kind of wisdom that grounds us when everything else is shifting. They remind us that our lives are part of a greater story, one not dictated by trends or noise, but by purpose and meaning. And this awareness changes us. We become more centered, more compassionate, more alive. So the next time the world feels overwhelming, resist the urge to add more noise to distract yourself. Instead, step away. Listen for the silence. Within it, you may hear something eternal, and that voice, once heard, can never be forgotten. It becomes a compass, a comfort, and a call to live not just more quietly, but more true.